All right, welcome back, guys, to another edition of Live Wire. And on today's program, we're going to be speaking with Jason Packineau. He is the Strategic Advisor for Native and Indigenous Affairs with the National Endowment for the Humanities. We're going to be talking tonight about some grants that are the National Endowment for the Humanities has partnered up with the Department of Interior for funding projects related to the Indian boarding school initiative. So, with that being said, Mr. Packineau, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you. And I really appreciate you saying my last name correctly.
Well,
Doesn't happen too often.
along those lines too, I wanted to give you an opportunity to talk about your native heritage because there's a lot there in your parentheses, and I didn't want to mess any of that up. So, if you could give us an idea about your native background there, sir.
Sure, no problem. So, Dashkaja Hani Nidosh, Mihama Keshish. Greetings to all of you. My name is Jason Packineau. I'm the Strategic Advisor for Native and Indigenous Affairs for the National Endowment for the Humanities. I am a citizen of the Mandan, Hidatsa, Arikara Nation, MHA Nation up in Fort Berthold, North Dakota, and that's through my father's side. On my mother's side, I'm also from the pueblos of Jemez and the pueblo of Laguna in New Mexico. So what you were referring to was in all my email signatures, it says Mandan, Hidatsa, Arikara, Jemez, Laguna, and it's a mouthful, but it's something that for me is very important to recognize because I grew up very close to both sides of my family. I lived with my aunts and uncles in Laguna and Jemez. Lived with my grandparents out in Laguna and Mesita, and later on in life, I lived with my grandparents in Twin Buttes, North Dakota. So for me, I'm very much connected to all of those communities, and so for me, it's very important to recognize all of them. I know I can just say which tribe I'm enrolled in, but for me, I really was fully brought up amongst all those communities.
Absolutely, and that's something that on our show we have to respect because the audience will get mad if we don't. So, it's down here. We always tell you your clan, and your ceremonial grounds and everything is like and who your relatives are is the first thing you should always mention. So, with that being said, what are the grants? Who are they for? And if you could just touch on a little bit of what are the objective with these grants from the perspective of the National Endowment for the Humanities?
Sure. These are special grants. So they fall a little bit outside of our normal grant funding system because they come at the chair's request. So the chair of the National Endowment for the Humanities is Shelley Lowe. She's Navajo from Ganado, Arizona. And in her time as chair of the National Endowment for the Humanities, she's had a chance to meet with Secretary Holland and the Department of the Interior, attend some of the Road to Healing tour stops to listen to the accounts of survivors and their descendants. And because of that, she really felt that there was an opportunity to directly fund tribal communities that would be in support of the Federal Indian Boarding School Initiative. And so what she sort of tasked me with doing is to create these special chairs grants. And so the chairs grants are for $30,000 for per application, and they are intended for communities to address any humanities-related topic related to the Federal Indian Boarding School Initiative. So it could be simple oral history projects. It could be culture and language projects, because a lot of what the Indian boarding school system did was remove or strip students of their culture and their language. So in some ways, it's a way to repair that.
Right.
It could also go towards museums and exhibition work to help document some of those experiences from survivors or their descendants. It's broad enough that it could even go towards working with individuals or tribes who might want to start planning repatriation efforts. So how do we bring back items or individuals who might still be at Indian boarding school sites? So it's very wide and expansive. It's it's essentially anything that's humanities related. And
Okay.
humanities is sometimes not always an easy term to grapple with. Since I've joined the agency back in February, when I tell people I work for the National Endowment for the Humanities, the first question is, "What's that?"
Right, right.
and so the easiest way and that's our job. Our job is to support and highlight the humanities. And so for me, when I tell people what I do, I say, what I do is.
Oh, we froze up there, guys. Let's see if it comes back.
Did we lose the
Yeah,
connection?
you froze up for just a second. You were telling me what you do at the National Endowment for the Humanities.
Sorry about that.
No problem.
So what our job is at the agency is to really promote and support culture and knowledge. How do we make meaning of our lives? How do we make meaning of our culture? How do we make meaning of our knowledge? And not just from a historical sense. I mean, history is a big part of the humanities work, but how do we make meaning for it in the sense that it will help inform us in the things that we're going to do in the future as well.
I see.
So passing down culture is very important. Passing down knowledge is very important. So those are the types of things that we really want to help support and fund. And so that's what the humanities is. So if any project related to the Indian Boarding School Initiative is going to help highlight the stories of the experiences of survivors and their descendants, or is going to help create meaning, or help even just uplift those stories, or uplift the boarding school experience in general, those are the types of things we want to fund, because Chair Lowe has really wanted communities to feel like they have a resource to tap into when it comes to federal funding. And so that's essentially what the special funding opportunity is all about.
Okay. And now for these grants, this funding opportunity, I know in the verbiage of the announcement, and you guys, I want to remind the audience, if you guys have a question, pop it into the chat and we'll ask it. Also, there's a link to the announcement for these grants in the description of this video. In there, it kind of mentions tribal governments or organizations working with Native communities. Can individuals apply for these grants, or is it only like 501c? Like, what are the guide rails there on that?
Yeah, we so you need to be a 501c3.
Okay.
So if you are an individual who has a 501c3 set up, then you are able to put forth an application. We will accept applications from federally recognized tribes. And at this point in time, we are not accepting applications from state recognized tribes. And that's something that we're working to address.
Okay.
And so that's something that maybe in a future funding opportunity, we'll be able to kind of navigate. But we're also asking that if you are a non-tribal entity, that you have a letter of support from a tribal community.
Okay.
So if this is perhaps maybe like a school system that maybe wants to create curriculum, we would ask then that application come in with a letter of support from tribes that were specifically, impacted by boarding schools. And that's really important to us. We have a code of ethics at our agency on how organizations should work with tribes. We don't want this to be funding that doesn't reach people on the ground. We really, really do want it to be meaningful. We want it we want tribal communities to really feel like this is a resource for them. So that's why it's really important for us to see that. So when we get these applications, those will be part of the process for us to sort of scrutinize and figure out, what's a meaningful fundable project for us. And we really do want to see those type of things in the application. Because I'm sure there are some organizations that could put forth a great application, but if they're not involving tribal communities and we can't see that throughout the application, then it means that it's outside of the scope of what we want to do in terms of impact. And I would say that probably the other two things that we want to highlight, or that we highlighted in the announcement, is that we really want to highlight any work that's going to involve elders, because that's an aging population. Their experiences, unfortunately, cannot be captured once they pass away. So it's really important that for us that we kind of highlighted that. So working with tribal elders is very important to us, and also working any projects that would work with tribal youth. I think it's important for us not only to reach that population who might be aging out, but it's also important for us to make sure that that knowledge gets passed on to the next generation so that they understand what was the boarding school experience, what was it all about, how can we make meaning of it, how can we kind of move forward together with this sort of knowledge that for so many years has either been hidden, not talked about, or in some ways has been erased.
Yeah. With these grants, are the projects that you guys are looking at projects that have already been started, and this would be supplemental funding, or is it possible if somebody hasn't done any work on their project to propose this and get the grant and then do the project? Is there any guidelines on that?
It could be both.
Okay.
So this could help support the continuation, or maybe probably more appropriately, the expansion of a project that has already been done. I've talked to a number of individuals who said, "Oh, we did an oral history project, but we didn't have enough funds to travel out to communities, to go out to elders to record their story." This would be a perfect opportunity for you to apply to funding so that you could pay for perhaps the travel to go out into communities to record stories. So anything that might be shovel ready, those are things that we will definitely take in. And then we're also looking for projects that have just been percolating inside somebody's head and said, you know what, we just needed some amount of money to get this started. And so so both types of projects are definitely on the board. Projects that are brand new and projects that have already seen some sort of life, but just needs a little bit more funding to either expand its scope or its reach.
I see. And so each of the grants is $30,000. Is there a maximum? Like, what's the maximum number of grants or maximum amount of money that this project is going to entail?
Yeah. So each grant can be each award can be up to $30,000. So if you just have a $15,000 project, that's totally fine as well.
Okay.
$30,000 is the ceiling for these projects. At this moment, we're hoping to fund at least 10 projects. The deadline is December 1st, which I don't think I've said quite yet. So it's December 1st to submit your application. If we can get 10 projects funded, that would be awesome. And I think the other thing too to probably make note of is that if this is your first time submitting an application, especially to a federal agency like NEH, you can submit a draft of your proposal by October 1st, and we will review it for you and give you feedback and tell you how your proposal could be stronger, or what are some of the things that you can definitely work on to make it the best application that it can be. So I think that's also very important is getting that feedback
Yeah, absolutely.
from agency staff members who see this sort of thing all the time. And we really do hope that people who have never applied really do take into consideration of putting forth something, and that is just one thing that we can do to sort of help support those people who might be applying to the NEH for the very first time.
Yeah, and it kind of touches on my next question, which would be, let's say somebody applies for these grants, they get awarded a grant. How much support from the NEH is going to be there? Is there going to be like somebody they can call, say, hey, how do I report this expenditure or something like that? Like, is there going to be support on the back end from the NEH?
Yeah, every grant that gets funded and awarded through the agency is assigned to a staff member, and that staff member is specifically there to answer questions about any reports that need to be submitted, or any changes that might need to be made to the plan. That personnel support is definitely there on the back end.
Awesome. So, and I'm going to do a quick rundown for you guys watching. So, you need to be a tribal governmental organization, a 501c. If you're a non-native group or 501c, you need to get a letter of recommendation from a native community, and you need to, let's see, the deadline is December 19th, is that?
December 1st.
December 1st. So you need to have your application in before December 1st. So is there anything that I missed there on that rundown?
And then if you want to submit a draft to be reviewed for feedback, that would be by October 1st.
Okay, so you need a draft for feedback. You need to get it in by October 1st. Is there anything related to this funding initiative that we haven't talked about that you think is important that we need to mention?
You know, I think the most important thing is just to feel, for people to understand that they can definitely reach out to us as an agency for help and support. If you email boarding school projects at NEH.gov, we can get back to you and help, help kind of answer any questions you might have about the funding opportunity, answer, even simple things about, maybe I have 2 ideas or maybe I have 3 ideas. What idea might seem to be the best way going forward. Those, I mean, we're just looking to really, put this money back into communities. And so we're all eager to make sure that, we get enough people interested. I think, in my line of work, sometimes I feel like people opt out and don't try for funding because they just think, well, I don't have a chance. And I definitely want to make sure that, people really see this as an attainable opportunity, that this is something that, and that, for whatever reasons, they shouldn't self-opt out. They should, definitely consider it. And we really want to make sure that we get this money into communities.
Awesome. So my next question is, let's say, and I'm just going to give an example. Let's say somebody was awarded a grant and they did an oral history project. What happens to that project after it's completed? Is there requirements for it to be in the National Archives or anything like that? Like, how will it be incorporated into the boarding school initiative?
So the boarding school initiative has its own separate oral history project that they are set out to begin very soon. And that's also, that's something that I'm also learning about too, because this is my first time being a federal employee as well. So you brought up a good question that, I'll be very, very honest. I don't have the answer right off the tip of my tongue.
That happens to me a lot. So it's no problem.
Being new to being a federal employee for the last 6 to 7 months, I've realized I'm like, wow, there's a lot to bureaucracy. And that's definitely one of the questions that I can definitely get back to anyone that they have a question on. But this is what the NEH does all the time, is like, who holds ownership of the materials produced by our projects, right?
Yes.
So, we're always leaned towards tribes, communities. They should be the ones that hold this information. In our code of ethics, if anything is documented and the person giving the interview or person giving the research material doesn't consent, then it shouldn't be made public.
Right.
Those are all really the type of things that we take seriously. But that is a good question that I will definitely write down and definitely have an answer to.
All right. Well, and you guys can, there is a link in the description of this video to the announcement of these grants. In that announcement, there's also an information email that you guys can email if there's a question that occurs to you later, or you want to get the answer on a question that we didn't have the answer to in this interview. You can always email that information email and find out the answer there. I want to remind you guys, you can post questions in the chat, but it looks like we're doing a good job because I don't see any questions in the chat popping up. We're at about 18 minutes, so I guess the next question for me would be, is there going to be a reporting of all these grants that's going to be made public after the fact? Like the deadline is in December, and then is there going to be somewhere that we are going to see like a list of what projects got funded through these grants and those things? Is that on the agenda?
Yeah, that does get reported out. All of these will have to go through our normal process. It goes to the chair. The chair signs off on what they approve or don't approve. If it does get approved, that's still not the end of the process line. It then goes before the National Endowment for the Humanities Council. And so the council members get to review the projects, and they get to scrutinize and ask questions about, projects that are going to be funded. And then after all that, then the chair gets to go back and decide based on all the information, that was passed on to her, whether or not she'll go through with funding the opportunity. And then once that happens, then then it does have to go into the public record, so people will know what projects are funding, where they're being funded, what the projects entail, what the scope of the project is, and also what the sort of performance period or when the project will actually take place. And that actually reminds me that we'll look for applications that will start January 1st, 2024.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're thinking about putting forth a project, you have time
Right.
to definitely, it's not something that, you need to get out the door tomorrow. But I should also add too, that December 1st is the deadline, but it's a rolling deadline. So if you do feel compelled to submit something, let's say end of August or early September, you are more than welcome to. But don't feel like you just have to wait all the way till December 1st.
Okay. Oh, well, we lost the connection there for a second.
Yeah.
Oh, here he's back.
All right. Sorry about that.
No problem. It happens. Well, I think we've covered all the bases. I do want to thank you so much for coming on the program tonight, and I hope you guys get all 10 of your projects funded and everything goes great on that front, because I think it's a wonderful opportunity, because there is a need for funding these types of researches and oral histories and community programs that the National Endowment for the Humanities could easily inject some funds into some projects that are out there right now. So, with that being said too, for the audience, you guys, tomorrow is a Meet the Candidate live stream with Principal Chief Hill at 6 p.m. Wednesday, Robin Whitecloud, who's a candidate for the Okmulgee District, is going to be on her Meet the Candidate video at 6 p.m. Thursday, we have Dodie Barnett. She is a candidate in Creek District, and she's going to be on at 7 p.m. And then on Friday, we have Lahoma Schultz. She is a candidate for Principal Chief, and she is going to be in her Meet the Candidate live stream at 6 p.m. So if you guys want to ask those candidates any questions, come into the chat and post your questions, and we'll do them then. And then we are going to have a whole nother slate of candidates next week. So tune in if you're interested in that. Mr. Packineau, thank you so much for being on the program. And for you guys out there that are watching, I'll see you next time. Mado and Chihichath, Lees.